This is John for johnnysbeat.com. Today, I have the pleasure of being on the beat with a longtime friend, artist, writer, comic expert, Trevor Mueller. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, man. How are you doing?
I am good. We've talked to you several times over the years, never had a chance to really sit down and get a good interview. So let's get cracking.
I love
I know I've asked you this in the past, but for new viewers, could you give us a brief history of how you got started?
it. Yeah, so I started off actually doing web comics and self-publishing them back in like 2009. It's been a little over a decade. And my very first series had kind of a naughty title called A-Hole. And it was just like a gag strip where, I got to do a lot of experimentation, both with like my writing as well as with my art. And as my ambitions kind of grew and the stories I wanted to tell changed quite a bit, I went from kind of a talking heads gag strip format there to figuring out that I needed to really work with other artists and talent to try to bring those stories to life that were more ambitious. And so that's when I started launching into other series like Albert the Alien.
Now, when I was in high school, when I was in grade school, a lot of kids like to draw, like to create comics. How do you know, and how did you make the step to go, I could actually do this for a career?
It's an excellent question, actually, because I was also making comics throughout elementary school, middle school, high school, and then I took a break in college because I was like, "Oh, I'm paying to be here. I should probably, pay attention." Uh, so I took 2 years off. I had all these stories looming around in the back of my head, and a bunch of my friends were starting up web comics at the time when web comics were really young. They were really fledgling. And they were doing a jam style web comic series. So essentially, like one person writes and draws an installment, and then somebody else continues that story with the next installment and the next update, and so on and so forth. And I got to do one or two of those, and that kind of reignited my love of storytelling. In terms of like how I decided for this to be a career, it wasn't until I got challenged by a couple of friends of mine, Russell Lissau and Josh Elder, who I had met at a convention. Both of them had a couple of DC books under their belt, and they had really encouraged me to take some of the web comics that I'd been working on and just try to print one book, try to print a couple of books, and bring them to a convention and just see if they sell. And so I set a little budget aside. I basically said, here's some money. I'll use this to print the books. I'll use this to get tables at conventions. And, if I sell all the books and I make a little money, then I'll make another book. And if I don't sell any of them, then I'll go home and play video games and I'll give up on this dream of comics. And suffice to say, I don't play a lot of video games. So,
Well, now, Albert the Alien is one of the first things that I noticed about you or noticed from you, your work. How did you come up with the concept and tell us a little bit about it?
yeah, so I'll start with what it's about. So, Albert the Alien is a young reader's adventure series about the first foreign exchange student from outer space. It's basically a love letter to the Saturday morning cartoons that I grew up with in the 80s and 90s. More contemporary wise, I kind of compare it to like Gravity Falls on Disney and Steven Universe. So it's got kind of like the mystery and the nuance of Gravity Falls and kind of the heart and love that kind of goes into like the Steven Universe series. And it really kind of originated, I guess, twofold. One, I got approached by an editor for an educational anthology that they were putting together called Reading with Pictures. And they said, we really want to do, 8 to 10 page stories in here. We want it to have some kind of educational theme or educational location. And we've got a new artist that we're thinking about pairing you up with because I didn't have an artist attached to it at the time. And so I was like, well, what kind of story can I tell that takes place in a school that's educational and entertaining? And I thought back to my time in middle school and high school and how, as a nerdy kid who was way more into X-Men than I was into sports or football, it's kind of socially ostracized. This is before the X-Men movies had come out, before any of the comic book things were mainstream. I don't even think Blade had really been out yet at this point. And so comic culture today has become pop culture, but at the time, like, you were a nerd and therefore you were not worthy of people's time and attention. And I really felt like an alien among my own peers. And I was like, well, what if we took that concept? Because everyone at some point has felt alienated from their peers. What if we took that concept and just said it is an actual alien? And then what kind of fun and wacky adventure could that character go on with his friends because he's from another planet, because he doesn't understand how things work on our world. And that became kind of the impetus for the Albert stories, where every chapter of Albert was kind of its own episode, if you will, of a story. So like episode 1 is about Albert's first day in school and how his alien school supplies take over the classroom because they think they can do a better job teaching. And Albert, of course, has to make his friends, and they've got to defeat this giant robot monster made out of human school supplies. And then the adventure concludes, and then they go on to the next episode. And so for me, that was really kind of what inspired, I think, the story. And Gabriel Bautista, my artist on there, again, the editor had kind of hooked us up. Gabe had won like Eisner's for coloring, but nobody had given him a shot at doing illustration. And so this was his first chance to really kind of show his chops when it came to drawing. And he designed the character based on a 1-sentence description. He's a 7th grade student from another planet. That's it. That's all I gave him. And so, and we had a lot of fun working together on that story. And I pushed him again. I was like, dude, I really like working with you. Let's do another 10-pager. And we did it, and we self-published it. And then I was like, dude, I really like working with you. Let's do like a 20-pager. Let's do a full issue. And so we did like a full issue, and we printed that. And then, we started handing those out to editors. We started capturing attention. And I was like, Gabe, do you want to spend the next, 6+ years of your life making Albert the Alien webcomic series, updating twice a week? And at that point, Mark Waid had become aware of it. And he was like, dude, I've launched this new thing called Thrillbent. I would love for this to be on there. And suddenly we started getting, Harvey Award nominations thrown at us and all kinds of stuff, because we were just telling a cute little story about a goofy little kid from another planet.
Well, now, was it difficult for you to balance? Obviously, there are life lessons in there. There's educational tools. Was it difficult for you to balance that with actually making it entertaining?
Well, when we went into the series itself, it became a little less educational and a little bit more just kind of Saturday morning cartoon. There are some educational elements that we put into the series, but that got downplayed for the entertainment value instead. But it was interesting to make the transition to write a children's story, because most of the stuff that I had written up until that point for either my webcomics or my self-published work had really been for like teen or adult audiences. And so trying to figure out, how do I put danger into this, but not make it so scary that like a 6-year-old isn't going to want to read it, became kind of an interesting challenge. And again, it was a bit of a research opportunity for me to go back and kind of rewatch some of those cartoons I grew up with, the things that were kind of inspiring the feelings I wanted people to have while they were reading Albert. And how do they kind of handle content, and how do they handle danger, and if there are kids in peril, like what do they do? How scared are those kids? Like, so those types of things we took very, very seriously. And then we also had a bully character in the series as well. And I wasn't asked to do this, but I came up with rules for what the bully could and could not do to other people. So he's kind of verbally mean, but he never touches anyone else. So there's never any kind of like physical intimidation or anything. He's actually like a very short character, and usually like bosses around his 2 larger lumbering goons, so that he can like, stand on their backs and be eye level with another character or something. So there's a lot of stuff like that where we're trying to figure out, how do we make this like funny, but he's also trying to be like a bully. So it was an interesting challenge to kind of balance, and I think one that was a really fun exercise to do. And again, we continue to get kids buying this book at conventions from me that absolutely love it. They love the characters, they love the world, and they'll always send me fan art of like them drawing their own version of Albert in his, submarine outfit, or in his deep space outfit, or in his volcano outfit, because kids love lava. And I was like, I didn't put lava into this comic book, and that was a big missed opportunity. So yeah.
No, you mentioned comic conventions. I know you're going to be appearing at C2E2 coming up. Who have been some of the people that you really were excited about meeting at conventions?
Oh, man, that's an interesting question, because yes, there are the comic creators, but then I also do a lot of anime shows and stuff as well. And I have met a plethora of voice actors and former Power Rangers and stuff like that, that I never in my wildest dreams would have assumed I would have met them in person, much less like had their phone numbers put into my phone. So one of the first ones that I met was Talent Caldwell, and Talent was somebody that I had been familiar with through his early work over at like Image Comics, working with Michael Turner on Witchblade. He did Wildcat's Nemesis. He was doing some additional books when Michael started to write some of the DC Comics works, and he did Superman with him. And I absolutely love Talent's work. And Talent was just sitting at a bar one time at a Wizard World Chicago, I think, just sketching, and nobody was talking to him. And I went up, just kind of introduced myself, and we became fast friends. And he's a really, really great guy that has actually done some promotional poster work for Albert the Alien for free. Like, I never asked him to do it, but he was like, "Hey, like, I like the character. I want to try a new art style. Let me do this thing for you." And I was like, "Yes, please." So really, really like that. Actor-wise, like, I met Doug Jones, who's probably one of the biggest names that I know, and yet people who are unfamiliar with Doug's body of work have no idea that they've seen him in things. But I met him while he was talking to David Mack at an Ohio convention one time, and for people who don't know who Doug is, he's usually behind prosthetic makeup in all of the movies and TV shows he's appeared in. So he was like the zombie in Hocus Pocus, and will be reprising that role in Hocus Pocus 2 on Disney Plus. He was all of the creatures in Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth. He was the fish man in both Hellboy 1 and 2 and The Shape of Water. He was the alien commander on Star Trek Discovery for 4 seasons, most recently. So he's a prolific actor, very, very friendly guy, and I got to meet him just hanging out at a convention because he was there just chit-chatting with the other people that were at the con. And very, very friendly guy, very, very nice. And then the last one that I'll mention too, I did a series of anime conventions about 10 years ago, and at every single one, Johnny Young Bosch was showing up to them. And for those unfamiliar, Johnny Young Bosch was not the original Black Power Ranger from Mighty Morphin. That was Walter Jones. He was the Asian Black Ranger that replaced him, and then was in like the 2 movies that went to theaters, and was on the show for a number of years. And Johnny has become a prolific voice actor within the anime and video game community, doing series like Trigun, Akira, Bleach. He's in the Devil May Cry video games. Dude's in everything. And so Johnny and I hit it off all those years ago at those conventions, and just really got to know each other and bond. And now that he's trying to like branch out and get back into doing like film, he's trying to produce and direct. He actually has me writing a number of scripts for him for movies and film. And so again, this is me getting a chance to kind of flex my muscles a little bit, and try something new while still working with one of my friends and longtime buddies.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, the experiences that you have at those conventions, the friendships, the connections you make, it's unbelievable. Now, as I said, you're going to be at C2E2, but you got something that you're big time now promoting, Nexus Point. Tell us all about Nexus Point.
So Nexus Point is, again, kind of my return to webcomics, and it's a webtoon original series, a cyberpunk action story about hackers versus bounty hunters. And for anyone who's not familiar with webtoon, I mean, webtoon is one of the growth platforms in comic reading. It just so happens to be an app on your phone that's free. A lot of the comics that are on there tend to have a more manga-looking style to them, and ours is no exception. But we do have a lot of Western creators that are on there that are big time name in comics. Katie Cook has a series on there. Dean Haspiel has a series on there. Tom Zoller, Justin Jordan. And so I actually got introduced to my editor by Justin at a New York Comic Con one time, and said, I really want to pitch something for this. It's a comic that exists in a vertical scroll. So it's kind of like you're thumbing through social media, but you're reading panels in succession. And from a writing perspective, it's really fun to kind of play in this space, because you're not, you don't have the normal conventions of like the page turn or anything like that. You're just trying to get people to keep scrolling. But I'm going off on a side tangent. So Nexus Point is about a young hacker named Jemmy, who has a mysterious past and some missing memories. And she just started her first day working at the largest tech company in the world as a white hat hacker, right? So she's there to basically help make sure that their security is up to snuff, that nobody can break in. And while she's there, she participates in an exercise and sees a file that she's not supposed to see. And suddenly she's being hunted by, rogue hackers, bounty hunters, and a paramilitary organization that nobody's ever seen before, that are armed to the teeth like their own private army. And the only person that can keep her safe is a former detective turned bounty hunter named Jack Travis, whose past is tied into the file that she's downloaded. And the two of them have to help keep each other alive while they hate each other the whole time. So it's a really kind of fun call back to like political thrillers that I used to grow up loving. Contemporary versions of that would be like Captain America Civil War, right? But like very much inspired by Minority Report and 3 Days of the Condor and those types of movies, where we're trying to kind of showcase the intensity, and there's a lot of mystery at the beginning, and then as the series progresses, you start to get a lot of answers to those questions that we raise early on. So it's up right now. It updates every Saturday for free. It's completely free to read, and I think as of this recording, we've got 5 or 6 episodes that are already up and available. So anyone who wants to read my next comic book project for free, go to Webtoon and search for Nexus Point, and you can enjoy it.
Now, does Nexus Point, does it have a definitive end yet, or could it be ongoing infinitely?
Yeah, so Webtoon has kind of an interesting model. They want their stories to have an ending, and it all kind of depends on how well the series is performing. We just launched earlier this month in July, so we haven't gotten a pulse check just yet as to how we're performing, as to whether or not we would get a second season or not. We have story ideas if we do get a second season, but worst case scenario, we have a completed story and it will be finished within that first season. And then if we get a green light for season 2, we've got more story that we can go on. So there'll be plenty more yet to come.
So you got plenty of ideas rolling around in your head. This thing could potentially go for a while.
Yeah, I mean, the idea behind it was, kind of a buddy cop-ish story in a cyberpunk kind of virtual world, where what happens when technology is no longer handheld, it's all kind of connected directly into the brain. And so with a procedural story like that, the possibilities are endless for what you could potentially do in that space. So we've set up in the first season probably 4 or 5 mysteries that will all be concluded by the end of season 1. And if there is popularity enough behind it, if there is enough of a thirst behind it, I definitely have ideas for a season 2, and Webtoon is open to hearing those pitches. But they at least want to make sure that we've got a completed story for a full season if we only get a single season. So I'll have more in terms of numbers and how we're performing probably in the next several weeks. But right now, I mean, we're off to a pretty solid start. We were the #1 sci-fi comic on Webtoon our first week, which was pretty
better than that.
I know. My artist on the series, I don't know that he's done a ton of comic books before, but he's absolutely crushing it on this. But he's a video game artist, and he's worked on video games like Contra and Fortnite.
Wow.
So he's got a really fresh and unique style that he brings to it, and he loves sci-fi. He loves cyberpunk. So he is just throwing like everything he's ever wanted to draw in those types of worlds into this series. We've got a scene where some of the characters are outside in the rain, and because again nothing's handheld in this world, everything's kind of virtual, they have drones that operate as umbrellas.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, that's just a neat idea. Like, where did you come up with that? And so he's like, dude, you said people don't really hold stuff. So like everything's just kind of virtual in this world. And it's all about cybercrime and how hackers have really kind of taken over, because money's not physical anymore. It's all virtual. There's no ATM machines to go rob. There's no banks to go rob. You hack people's accounts and steal their credits and go have a party. And so it's how do you kind of combat those types of things, and with a bounty hunter and a hacker duo kind of teaming up is what our story is kind of about, and how they find those conflicts and try to resolve them.
Well, I have webtoons on my phone. I haven't checked Nexus Point out yet. I do plan on it because I followed you for years. I enjoy Albert the Alien. Now I'm really excited about checking out Nexus Point.
Yeah, please do. And what's cool about Webtoon too, some of the series on there have animation in some of the panels. Ours does not yet. But we do have music in ours. And Johnny Young Bosch, who I mentioned earlier, is actually doing the music for our series. He has a band called Where Giants Fall that you can check out on Spotify. And so he's doing original jams for our story. And then we made a trailer for it as well. And Johnny actually edited and did voice work for the trailer, which is pretty cool. So there's a lot of fun stuff that we've kind of done around Nexus Point as well as we start to build, as we continue to build the story. Because again, it just launched like 4 weeks ago. So there'll definitely be a lot to check out as the series kind of progresses.
Well, I appreciate your time. Before I let you go, tell everybody where they could find you, where they could find Nexus Point, where they could find all your stuff.
Yeah, Trevor A. Mueller is my Twitter, my Facebook, my Instagram, my TikTok. Find me, follow me, friend me. And then if you want to read Nexus Point, just go to webtoons.com. And in the search bar, just type in Nexus Point and it will pop up. And again, it updates every Saturday. I'll have another Webtoon original series launching in August, I believe August 10th as well, which is quite different from Nexus Point. It's kind of a workplace comedy by way of Buffy the Vampire Slayer called Repossessed. And it's about college kids versus demonically possessed antiques. So
I'm in. I'm sold already.
Yeah. So plenty more to come.
Well, Trevor, I appreciate your time. As I said, I enjoyed your work for all these years. I encourage everybody to check out Trevor A. Mueller all over social media and your website. Check out Nexus Point and check out Albert the Alien. Even if you're an adult, it's still entertaining. I'm a big kid and I enjoyed it. So
that was what we were going for.
Exactly. Trevor, thank you very much for your time, and I'll see you at C2E2.
Thanks, Dan. See you there.
Thank you, buddy. Take care.